moment in her life, because not one thing had the kind of deep resonance and meaning for her that Mary Ann's home had for her. She'd never before been quite so conscious of the transient nature of her life, but in one blunt sentence, her patient had reduced the past 10 years to a tumbleweed in her mind's eye, while Mary Ann's own past had risen up like a redwood, towering, significant, rooted. After that, she'd felt so aware of how alone she was, that she'd let every friendship she'd left behind wither on the vine and die, that she'd done a crap job of making new friends since she'd moved to San Diego, that her last boyfriend, Marcus, hadn't been missed from the day she'd rolled him out of bed and out the door for the last time. Those revelations had led to online perusals of Copper Ridge, which had led to an ad she hadn't been able to get out of her head. Long-term lease, perfect for a private residence or bed and breakfast. From there, she'd examined her savings, done estimated profit and loss based on exhaustive research of similar businesses, and before she'd quite realized what she was getting herself into, she'd committed. Committed to leaving the career she'd spent more time in school for than she'd spent actually practicing. For the first time in 10 years, she'd agreed to an extended time frame in one location. And for the first time in 10 years, she was headed back to the one place she'd ever called home. Of course, now she felt like she was approaching doom, which she didn't think was at all dramatic, since she was never dramatic, except for when she was dramatic. From the back seat, she heard Tobias, more commonly known as Toby, let out a plaintive meow. The entire road trip had been endured with growing indignation by her cat, but then she paid the rent, so he had to deal. "Sorry, bud," she said. "I have the thumbs, I man the can opener. That means you have to stick with me. And if that means moving up the coast, it means moving up the coast. At least I didn't fly and throw you into cargo." Which, during their many moves together, had been a necessity on occasion. Toby wasn't a fan of air travel. The cat didn't respond to her attempts at mollifying him, which didn't really surprise her. In many ways, she was much more dependent on him than he was on her. Sadie looked out at the expanse of evergreen trees that lined the road, a rich velvet green that she hadn't found anywhere outside of Oregon. California was sun and palm trees, deep blue ocean and heat. It was beautiful, but in a different way. Copper Ridge was all majestic mountains, shades of green and steel-gray sea, not the kind of beach you hung out on in a bikini unless you were a local. The wind was cold and blew the sand up hard and fast, the grains biting into skin like little teeth. It was its own kind of beauty, that was for sure. She'd been all over the United States, from the deep south to the East Coast and back west again, and nothing had ever been quite like this. She'd never thought she'd be back. But she was. And the dread was ever encroaching. Suddenly, the car engine started to growl, and she pushed down the gas pedal, hoping to feel it rev again, only to be disappointed. "Oh, frickety frick," she muttered as she pulled to the side of the road, and the engine went totally silent. Gas had apparently been needed sooner than expected. She leaned forward, pressing her head against the steering wheel. I knew it was doomed. I knew I was doomed. She straightened up and looked backward at Toby. "Don't start. Don't get judgy." Toby did nothing but stare at her with green eyes that were extremely judgmental despite her command. "You suck, cat," she said, reaching down and digging for her purse, then feeling around for her phone. She pulled it out and saw one bar of service. Oh, right, because that's what you got for moving away from civilization and settling in the absolute sticks. She tapped her fingernails against the side of the phone and contemplated who to call. She didn't really know anyone in town anymore. Her own parents had moved away ages ago, and she wouldn't call them even if they hadn't. Thankfully, she could get roadside assistance, but what a freaking pain. She pulled up the browser on the phone and typed tow trucks into the search engine, then grimaced as she watched the little wheel up in the top left-hand corner of the phone spin and spin and spin while it tried to grab hold of a satellite signal for long enough to pull up some results. "Oh, Copper Ridge, you've bested me before. You aren't allowed to do it."